5 habits of highly successful clients. While I would love to take credit for all these amazing transformations I've been involved in over the course of the last 9 years of coaching, the reality is the coaching is really only as good as the effort and consistency that is applied to it. I've observed some of the traits of my most successful clients over the last 9 years, and I've put them into this video. Firstly, a moderate level of consistency throughout. I would much rather we have a good degree of sustainable consistency as we go through the weeks, rather than a flurry of activity and enthusiasm, getting burnt out, and then just slacking off. In terms of how you can all benefit from this, I've always said, if there is a hack, if there is a trick, it is in making your fitness lifestyle congruent with your regular life, making them fit together. A sustainable level of effort on all fronts is always more preferable to just doing a bunch of stuff for a couple of weeks and then slacking off entirely. Next is to lean into your strengths. Part of this is understanding that every time I get a new client, I'm going to ask them firstly what they've done in the past and try and pick out some of the successes that they've had and build on those. So for you guys, ensure that you're leaning into your strengths. Make sure you're building on past wins and past successes. Don't try and reinvent the wheel every week, every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks. And all too often I see people saying, I've done this routine now. Now next, I'm going to try this routine. You don't want to start from scratch all the time. You should have built up a bedrock of successes and build upon those. That is integral to my method of coaching. Building upon successes, evaluating what's worked, what didn't work, and making tweaks rather than big overhauls. Next thing is having a definitive goal. There should be the understanding that having multiple opposing goals is not going to get you the best of both worlds. In fact, very often it gets you half of each at best. More likely, nothing of either. And I think some of the more common examples of this are people who want to get bigger and stronger, but every time they bulk for a few weeks, they just go, oh, I'm getting too fat. I don't want to do this anymore. Getting bigger and stronger more than likely will mean you will put on a bit of fluff. We all did it. Don't get completely sloppy, but at the same time, you have to accept a bit of weight gain because it's part of the goal. Another example of this is wanting to primarily focus on hypertrophy, but then also insisting that you must have the power lifts in the routine. This is something I see a lot as well. Now, for some people, they can get away with it. Every now and again, I come across somebody who, if they're having to do powerlifting training alongside the hypertrophy training, their joints can't handle it. They get sore, they get beat up, which means they have to reduce the volume down to the point where they're no longer making progress on their primary goal, which is gaining muscle. So at some point, the rubber hits the road, and you've got to say to them, what are you more interested in? Growing muscle, or must you have your powerlifts in? So ensure you have definitive goals and you don't have goals which are opposing. And that's going to be different for different individuals. Some guys will be able to do both at the same time. Others won't. And it's important for you to put your foot down and recognize that. And don't force the issue if it's not working for you. Next thing, the clients that typically do the best always have an action bias. That means they're willing to give things a go. Rather than agonizing over the details, they'll give it a try first and think about it in full detail later when they come up against problems, rather than thinking of problems which they might encounter. Just go and give it a go. Another part of this is knowing when to evaluate. Now, I work in 6-week blocks. The reason I do that is simply because it allows a reasonable time frame to elapse so that you can evaluate what you've done. All too often, people are evaluating the routine or changing the routines every 2 or 3 weeks. That is way too much. It isn't enough time to actually see what's working and what isn't. I think part of what adds to people's frustrations and ultimately failures with training is this constant need to second guess and tweak a program. What they don't realize is that constant wanting to tweak a program in the effort to improve it, it might yield improvement, but it also might set you back so that you're constantly in this cycle of trying to improve something, but actually breaking it and never really giving it enough time to work before you change it. Ultimately, people need to recognize that the mindset they have of constantly second guessing and tweaking things may well be the very thing that's holding them back, not that little tweak that they think is going to unlock loads of gains. Next is working on their bottleneck. This could be a range of different things. It could be meal prep. It could be fitting in cardio. It could just be staying active and doing more steps, which is great for general health, but also injury prevention. It could be whatever you need to work on. It could just be consistency. One of the questions that I ask my new clients in the consultation is, what do you think holds you back? Very often they'll be upfront to go, you know what? It's my meals. I suck at meal prep. Like, great, work on that. Or very often they'll say things like, I just am overwhelmed with all the information out there and I need to stick to something. All of these points are applicable to every single one of you, whether you train with a coach or you train without one. I will call it there. But before I go, I will say, if you are viewing this video and you haven't yet subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe. That helps me out a lot. If you are interested in coaching and working with an experienced coach who has been involved in a lot of transformations, then there is a link in the description. If you would just like to support my work, then you can do so on Patreon. Thank you. Take care.